For all your TCG needs, make sure to check out SabaTCG.com. What's poppin', everybody? This is Sabro54. Today I'm going to be talking about some of the changes I'd make if I was in charge of the Pokemon TCG and I could do whatever the hell I wanted. I think I made this sort of video quite a long time ago, but it's probably maybe even 6 or 7 years ago, so we can do it again with some changes, because I think, yeah, all those years ago, a lot of the stuff I'm going to talk about weren't even happening. For example, with the first thing I would change is bringing back the fairy Pokemon. So fairy Pokemon basically disappeared after the Sun and Moon era. They decided to turn them into psychic Pokemon, and that always felt weird to me. Looking at some Pokemon like Marrow and Clefairy being psychic Pokemon, it just feels weird. I know that, of course, since the start, they didn't have all of the types of Pokemon you can have from the video games. Like you'd have poison Pokemon like Golbat and Zubat be grass Pokemon, then they turn them into psychic Pokemon. And fighting Pokemon, it's shared by rock types, ground types, fighting Pokemon, and I think those are it, right? But I'm aware of that. However, I still think that since they introduced the fairy Pokemon in the X and Y era, it was kind of ridiculous to just make them disappear again. To me, the stuff they do, and this applies to the rest of the changes that we make, they want the game to be very simplistic and very predictable. And then I got people telling me it's about the skill and blah, 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 blah. They want only a certain amount of types, and they don't want, fairy types being around. They'd hit dragon Pokemon for weakness, and then what do dragon Pokemon hit? I mean, nowadays we got dragon Pokemon mostly not having a weakness, I'm pretty sure. Nearly all of them aren't weak to anything, and they don't hit anything for weakness back. But why it's gotta be like that? Just make some dragon Pokemon weak to dragon, some dragon Pokemon weak to fairy. Maybe make some dragon Pokemon now weak to anything. I mean, in Gen 3 there were some dragon Pokemon that had no weakness, and then there was all the other ones that were weak to colorless. So if they want to have this sort of, it's like they want to have things to be predictable, but they want things to be kind of loose as well. I mean, Yu-Gi-Oh does this more, where it's anything that can happen. I'd rather have a bunch of stuff all over the place, a bunch of Pokemon with different weaknesses, different resistances. Not just, you got the water Pokemon weak to lightning, maybe some of them grass, that's it. Same for darkness Pokemon. Most of them are weak to grass, a couple of them are weak to fighting, that's it. I want a lot more variety, and this was pretty common in Gen 3 and especially Gen 4, I want to say. So I would definitely bring that back. I'd bring the fairy Pokemon back, seeing that pink, border, and the cards that make sense being fairy Pokemon like Xerneas and Aromatisse, all those Pokemon. It makes sense for them to be fairy, looked at as fairy Pokemon, not psychic Pokemon. So that's one of the things I'd make. It wasn't a thing back in like 2018, 2019. Second thing that I would do, this isn't about gameplay, but it's with the sets. I think booster boxes, having booster boxes be like 300 cards, like 265 cards, and then everything you get is useless and you don't really get a lot of pulls. To be honest, I really don't know why people buy Pokemon booster boxes. The value just isn't there. I guess it's for the collecting the artworks, trying to get maybe that lucky big pull like full art or secret rare, but the overall value isn't really there to me. So I would, if sets are gonna be this big, it'd probably be an exception, and then most sets, I think I just max it out at 150 cards, maybe 180 cards max. And more Pokemon just get a chance to be featured. When we don't need to keep getting like 10 Charizards every era and then other Pokemon don't get represented. Because the thing is, I understand they gotta have a lot of cards, a lot of Pokemon cards in every set, because there's a lot of Pokemon right now. So if you want to represent everybody, you need more cards in the set. But they don't even do that. They just keep giving prints to the same old stuff, and then you got some cards like Floatzel or for it, they don't see a card like in ages, and all of their cards are bad too, which is gonna bring us to another point. But anyway, I'd fix up the booster sets, maybe give better ratios, more fixed ratios. Maybe kind of like how Yu-Gi-Oh does it. But there needs to be some kind of value there for all the damn money you're spending, instead of just getting cardboard filler with a lot of these common Pokemon cards. Now we're gonna get into the gameplay side of things, which is a bit more serious and close to heart for me. What should I start with? I'm gonna leave the biggest one to last. So what I would do, I'd bring back Poke Powers and Poke Bodies. So once again, they wanted to simplify the game come Gen 5 and have things be pretty predictable, but it was a very stupid choice for me, and it always has been, always will be. In the past, we had abilities split into Poke Bodies and Poke Powers. Poke Bodies were basically always active, and they were sort of harder to negate, you could say. And then powers, you had to manually activate them, or, when you evolve into a Pokemon, play it down, that sort of thing. So it's pretty much, they work exactly the same as now. The only difference is, when they were split, you had maybe some cards that would negate only Poke Powers, not Poke Bodies. Or they would negate Poke Bodies, not Poke Powers. Or maybe you had a Pokemon that would say, oh, this attack is going to do extra damage to a Pokemon with a Poke Body. Stuff like that. So it gives you more room for a variety of different cards. Like some cards are gonna negate and affect this, some cards aren't, and it just made the game more interesting. Once again, a variety of cards that are gonna be good, and it's the same thing with the weakness. It's there's just a lot of variety of what can happen in the game, and what's gonna be good in what sense, what's gonna counter what. So they wanted to simplify the game, and they decided that we're going to make everything abilities, and I never got behind that. Yeah, and they also made it so that, with abilities, even if your Pokemon is affected by special condition, it still works, which back then, if something was affected by special conditions, Poke Powers wouldn't work. So maybe I wouldn't bring that back, but maybe I would. It depends. But I definitely bring back the body and Poke Power mechanic instead of ability. Fourth thing, I think we're at the number 4, right? I would change the ×2 weakness on Pokemon and bring back plus weakness. Or I guess if the HP and the attack sort of change, then maybe the ×2 weakness wouldn't be so bad. But the thing is with the ×2 weakness, I've said this before, back in the day, Pokemon has always had the ×2 weakness except in Gen 4. And it was pretty refreshing, but it kind of makes sense why the ×2 weakness existed for all this time, because you had attacks. That's how it works in the sort of video games in a way. Super effective, double the damage, I'm pretty sure. And, when you had attacks like in Gen 3 that would hit for 50 for 3, and then you hit for weakness, that's 100, it's still something that Stage 2 Pokemon are going to survive. They're going to be hurt really bad, but you don't get a guaranteed advantage of they're always dead. And then with other attacks, of course, you'd be getting one-hit KOs. But a lot of the bigger HP Pokemon, obviously, if you had like an EX with 160 HP, you gotta hit it for 80 for 3 to kill it in one shot and get those double prizes easily. And 80 for 3 is possible, of course, in Gen 3, but it wasn't as easy to pull off, okay? So nowadays, we got all these Pokemon with like 350 HP, 340 HP, this sort of range, but attacks do so much damage. Like the most basic, like weak-ass attack you can find on EX Pokemon is like 200, 180 for 3, okay? Even 170, 160 for 3, which I'm pretty much pushing it right now. But even that, if you just time it ×2, 320, 340 if it's 170, that's enough to get a one-hit KO on any Stage 2 EX Pokemon. So what this means is that if I'm playing like a Blaziken deck, or just any slow Stage 2 deck that has a weakness to a particular type, if my opponent is using a Pokemon like that, even if they're pretty weak, then it pretty much means they're going to have an insane advantage and just one-shot your dudes, no matter what. This sort of style of gameplay, it really just favors the faster decks. Back in the day, for Palkia V-Star, let's say, which wasn't that long ago, but Palkia V-Star, it had a pretty big weakness to lightning. So against the Miraidon Raikou deck, they would kill it in one shot. The thing was though, those guys were basic Pokemon. Palkia hit for a lot of damage. So if they had a big bench, you had a big bench, you powered up your Palkia V-Stars quickly enough, you could still one-shot them and sort of retaliate back with the one-hit KOs. So you weren't completely fucked. Obviously, they still had the advantage, but you weren't completely fucked, okay? You know, that's really the thing. It just benefits a particular gameplay, and then the slower, like maybe tank decks that slow to power up, and then you really rely on them to be able to take a shot at least once before they're dead, before they're KO'd. It just completely throws that out of the water, and it just makes that if you're playing a water deck, I'm playing a fire deck, you got like a guaranteed victory pretty much. So if we're gonna keep having this big ass HP on Pokemon, then I would make the weakness, let's say for stage 2 EXs, plus 100, maybe plus, I don't know, 120, maybe plus 80. It really depends. Maybe plus 80 is a little bit too low, but I'd bring the plus weaknesses back, and I guess just do the math and figure out how it just makes sense. Like for example, like in Gen 4, you had the small Pokemon, they would have like a plus 10 weakness, then the stage 1's a plus 20, and then the stage 2, plus 30. There were some very rare exceptions where they would have maybe plus 40 weakness, and then the times 2 weakness as well for level X's and some other Pokemon. But it was pretty predictable. So it'd be something like that right now too. Like, yeah, it's just the thing is though, we gotta fix the HP on the Pokemon too. Otherwise, if you would do like plus 70 and plus 80, you got the small ass Pokemon still with 60 HP. It doesn't make sense. So the HP definitely needs to change, which brings me to the last point I change, and that's the HP on the Pokemon. The distribution has been ridiculous for a very, very long time now. You can go to my website. I don't got like a search feature, unfortunately, where you can just search a particular Pokemon and then all its cards are going to show up, like in Bulbapedia. But if you just do your little due diligence, do your little research, you'll find that so many different Pokemon from like 15 years ago, they still got like the same stats, like a Gengar cards that still got like 130 HP or less with the free retreat, where you can find that like in, it was Gengar from 2010 Triumphant that had those sort of stats. Still had those in like X and Y. Sun and Moon era, there was like a Gengar from Crimson Invasion with still 130 HP. So we're over here in like the Scarlet and Violet era so many years after, and they still don't improve. You find all these stage 2 Pokemon with shitty HP, whether it's 140, 150, 160, 170 even, that's not gonna cut it. They're still dying in one shot. Whereas all the rule box Pokemon, they have gotten significant, very significant buffs every time there's a new generation. You go from the basic EXs to the Black and White era into the GXs and Sun and Moon. Then you go into the Vs, VMAXs, V-Stars. You go into the EXs once again now. Their buffs, like their HP buffs, are very significant. We're talking about 100 HP differences plus more, okay? So a stage 2 Pokemon that has 170 and 180 HP, it's always dying in one shot, okay? It can't really compete. And this is why all of the better, like stage 2 Pokemon, better in like quotation marks, because none of them are really better unless they run on some gimmick. It's like always a must for them to work on one energy or just very cheap energy and do very high damage, because you know that you're just gonna get one attack out of them, then they're dead. It's that sort of thing. So that's really bad. You would have to, that needs to change. Like it's the biggest thing I would change out of anything. Like if there was one thing I could do. You gotta change the HP on the stage 2s, and of course, I mean that on all regular Pokemon. They need to be just distributed again in a balanced manner. You can have basic Pokemon, small basic Pokemon that evolved twice, like Charmander, like Caterpie, what else? Like Abra, you guys get the idea. The basic ass small Pokemon. You can't have them still have 50, 60, and 70 HP. Like this is 15 years ago. Like in DP, the HP, they maxed out on these Pokemon at 60, let's say. And then maybe you'd have things like Rhyhorn with 70 or 80. Not even 80, just max 70 basically. But that was the exception. It's been like 15 years plus, even more. We get like a 10 HP buff when all these EX Pokemon and Rule Box Pokemon do so much more crazy damage. Like Dragapult with its 60 damage on the bench, instantly slaying these small Pokemon for free basically. If you don't evolve them in time, you're fucked. You know, if there was a Pokemon that existed like back then, like let's say Stormfront Gengar did this back in DP. It could kill a Pokemon in the active easily and then do like 50 damage counters on the bench as well in one attack for 2 energies. It'd be the most broken Pokemon ever. It'd be banned in 2 seconds. So it's ridiculous for these mechanics to exist. Either they need to just not make the rule box Pokemon so crazy, which of course that's not going to happen. Or if you just want to keep power creeping things, well, you gotta just make the power creep go for everybody. You can't have the small Pokemon still got 60 and 70 HP. They would need to have like 120 minimum, and that's like me being generous, 120, 130 HP. Then obviously the basic Pokemon that are legendaries, they'd have like a little bit more, like let's say 40 or 50 more. Kind of like how Gen 3, you'd have like your basic Pokemon with 50 HP, and then you'd have like a Groudon legendary with 80 HP, for example, or 90 max if it wasn't an EX. That sort of thing. Then the stage 1s are going to have a little bit higher, and then the regular Pokemon a little bit higher once again. But it would have to correspond with the rule box Pokemon. They can coexist and battle each other in an even playing field in terms of their stats, okay? It's not about meta. People are going to tell me, oh, it's just because they're not meta. This Pokemon, this deck isn't meta. It's not about meta. It's about being on an even playing field in the first place in terms of stats. Then we can talk about, you know, which has good abilities, good ass attacks, easy to use attacks, broken attacks, and then it can become meta, that sort of thing. But you can't have like shitty ass HP on these regular Pokemon. Been saying that for years. I think that about covers it. It's 20-minute video so far, right? So it's big enough. I covered a bunch of things. These are all topics that I've discussed before, changes that I would make for the Pokemon TCG. It's so close. Like the Pokemon TCG is pretty simple in the sense that if they just change a few things, it'd be wonderful in my opinion. It's not like Yu-Gi-Oh! Where no matter what they do, there's going to be some kind of problem. I guess I'm going to throw in one more thing, and this is for the rules. It's really annoying how, you know, the rules, you can't play, let's say, supporter cards attack on the first turn, but then depending on what you open with your hand, because you don't really have a choice, you gotta run items in your deck, you don't really have the options to have a deck be prepared for when you play first or second. You're sort of gambling a lot of the times. So back in DP, the player that went second had complete advantage, yeah, but because of the card pool, you could prepare. So okay, if I need to have like the call energies, I need to have these sort of cards, I need maybe to run my deck with Spiritomb so that I'm prepared if I gotta go first. My deck is prepared for that. And the format was much slower. Like your opponent wasn't gonna be able to do crazy shit on their first turn either, a lot of the times. So you had your chance to, maybe if you don't do much on the first turn, when you play second, you can start evolving your Pokemon slowly and you could do more shit. So people that get the idea are going to get the idea. If you weren't playing in the past, there's not much I can do to convince you. I'm trying to be as articulate as I can, but oh well. And yeah, that's my little like bonus thing, because with the new rules as well, I get it, there needs to be sort of balance in the first player playing first, but it just seems like the way it is right now, the people that want to play first are the people that they've prepared their deck to play first, so even if they got the chance, they play first anyway. okay? Whereas the other decks, they just want to play second because of Badio and just because of you being able to use supporter cards. It's just a lot that goes into it. When it comes to maybe rule box mechanics, I mean, they've done like everything. They've done like the double price Pokemon forever now. You know, the EXs, bringing them back, getting rid of them, bringing them back again. GXs were pretty much the same thing when you think about it, with a special extra attack. I think I'd really bring back level X's because we haven't really seen that. They kind of sort of did that with the breaks, but it was kind of a half-assed manner, to be honest. Mainly because the break Pokemon were put into the regular Pokemon, and the buffs just weren't there. Only a few of them were successful, and really it was Greninja Break that was really successful because everything else about it was broken. But that's about it. Okay guys, this ends my rant. I haven't done one of these in a long time, and it's just always TCG matches and decks on my channel now, so I wanted to do something a little bit different. Hope you guys enjoyed the rant. Tell me what you guys think in the comments. I know that I'm always going to get a bunch of new kids that started playing 5 or 10 years ago that think everything that's going on now is normal. But whatever, you can tell me what you think. Sub to the channel, leave a like, share the video with your friends, and I'll see you guys next time. What a